Hey, it's Trevor Perry, Fresh Thinking again. Today, I have a very special guest. Introduce yourself, sir.
Hi, I'm Larry Bolhuis. Some people call me Dr. Franken because I do hardware things.
And so, how long have you been in this industry?
Oh, in the industry, actually, since I graduated from college, 1982.
So what got you into hardware?
My dad answered an ad in 1967. It said, learn to fix computers, make big money.
And he worked for IBM?
He never worked for IBM, but he worked on IBM gear as a third-party maintenance guy.
Cool. Now, did you work for him or just learn from him while he was working?
I learned from him because he actually had a TV radio business before, and all that gear was in the basement. Oscilloscopes and all of that. Yeah.
So now your basement looks even more junk.
Yes, I have an oscilloscope and all of those things, yes, and lots of power systems parts, yes.
Cool. And and you're famous for building bits and pieces and turning them into something that works. And we've had a few of those over the years here, right? You've brought Frankie occasionally and stuff like
Frankie
that. Frankie
actually has been to 2 conferences. Frankie 3's been to 2 conferences. Frankie 3 actually made 7 feet tall.
Cool.
And actually, Frankie 3 got to visit the Rochester labs.
IBM liked him for a while.
IBM liked him,
So
paid to ship him over there. Cool. That was fun. Got a lot of smiles out of that.
Cool. So today's topic is something that was really interesting. We've been talking since IBM i25 celebration. They pronounced that all of these cool things about the platform were what made the platform, and one of them was Timi. And Timi, for those who don't know, is Technology Independent Machine Interface.
Yes.
And it came out on a 38 where it was between the chip and the operating system, and so you could change the chip and not have to change the operating system, which huge advantage. So what's happened since then is we went from AS400 to that had the same thing, iSeries, System I, and then we got this Power Systems. And Power Systems, they brought in a whole bunch of new layers and new infrastructure. So I asked Larry the other day, does Timi still exist? So he's going to tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, and it really does. And I know for quite a while IBM kind of tried to make us not use the word Timi because it sort of sounds funny. But it really does exist still because the technology independence part, it is part and parcel of why Power Systems constantly is the first to market with many pieces of technology. Example, we were the very first to market with a solid state drive with a SAS interface, right? We're able, we had DDR3 memory in our Power 8s, and now we have DDR4 memory in the same Power 8. How does that work? Well, Timi allows us to do that. So you update some firmware stuff and Shazam, now we're putting in DDR4 memory chips. So it does exist, and it is an amazing part of why we could use, as an example, you all have Ethernet on your machine. Well, if you don't, I'd be puzzled as to how you talk to the thing, right?
Twin X.
Twin X. Yeah, that's it. Did you know there's Twin X for Ethernet?
Yes.
It's rare, but it's there.
Yes, you can use it.
Now, so when you created your first Ethernet line way back in the day, and you used coaxial cable, the little BNC twist connector, or even the AUI, if you remember that silly thing. I think actually Apple was kind of one of the early users of that. That card was, well, it was ugly and it was ginormous, and it plugged into a big SPD slot, and you used create line ETH. Right?
I remember that.
Attached it to a CMN number. And today you can buy a SRIOV adapter, all right, which sits in a PCIe X16 slot, and it runs at 10 gigabits per second. And you run create line ETH.
Okay,
right?
cool.
And you know, and the only additional parameters that have shown up are, okay, do I want, you know, the speed parameter got bigger. Right. And we got the ability to aggregate multiple lines together, so some things like that. But it's the same thing, and it's still a CMN number, even though that guy is vastly faster and newer technology. And oh, by the way, smaller.
So if I'm thinking about this, you know, we have the chip and then the memory, etc., and all the hardware, and then above that, we are now. This is in a power box. So, is Timi now moved because it was between the hardware and the operating system? It was sort of hard to pin down exactly where it was. Is it a piece of software? Is it a piece of hardware? Is it in the OS? Is it not? No, it was something separate. So, it appears to me then, from what you're saying, that being there still, it's in the power side of things, and it's been taken essentially away from what was the operating system. So, I mean, it really was never connected, but it's moved into more of a different location because we also have Vios in there.
Yep.
Is Timi below or above Vios, or do we not care?
Well, Timi, I believe, is still really part and parcel of IBMI.
Okay.
Right? So, and in fact, VIOS provides another layer
Yep.
of virtualization, right? And it's
Yep.
really kind of the key if you're doing all the hot rod stuff like, live mobility and all those things.
Yep.
But Timi is the part within IBMI that allows VIO server to provide disk drives instead of a SAS adapter or a fiber adapter or an old SCSI adapter.
Cool.
So it's still
So
there.
it's
doing the
still
same thing.
there and it's
Yeah.
still used for IBMI, but
Yep.
it's between IBMI and then the next layer, which
Yep.
is Vios, and then under that is essentially the hardware, right?
Yeah. And of course, we all know that there's certainly going to be some components or some bits of Timi that slid into the firmware of the power system, right? Because that was one of the early changes when we went to the Power 5, really, is when that started. We got a lot of those pieces into the firmware.
Yep.
And which was good for us because those things came out of the IBM licensed internal code.
Sure.
And it meant we didn't have to maintain them anymore because everybody needed them. Right.
But then, and the whole thing was when we got power, a lot of the stuff that we had functionality purely in IBMI is now moved lower into Vios and stuff like that. And
Exactly.
But Timi still remains there.
Timi is
So
still
it's still
there,
part of it.
and again, we don't use the name a lot.
Okay.
Just as IBM goes forward, they like to use names that don't sound kind of geeky. I don't know.
They like acronyms, but
They do.
But yeah,
they do. I mean, for example, we say licensed internal code, right? And we use that word. We used to
That was
sometimes
system
say
licensing.
system. Yeah,
And that was slick, right?
Kind of slick.
Slick,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
they kind of went.
Yeah.
I've worked on a lot of certification
Sure.
tests, and they kind of have guidelines. It's
about what
not
you
so
can
much
use.
a rule.
Okay.
It's more of a guideline.
Cool.
But
So if I went up to an IBM person, staff member, whatever, and I said, "Do you know about Timi?" If they haven't been around for a long time, they may not know it.
They may
because
not.
haven't
They
been
may not
referring to it.
remember it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it's still there, and it still is a huge advantage of why IBMI is the best operating system for business as far as moving forward with little or no disruption because I've got the ability. And if I want new technology, plug it in.
Plug it in.
Got it.
Yep.
Cool.
And very often it's merely a PTF or two
Beautiful.
dropped into an existing release, and suddenly
Yep.
we can support a new LTO or we can support
Cool.
a new IO adapter. Yep.
Cool.
Very cool.
Well, thanks, Larry, and Dr. Franken.
Yes.
And this has been another Fresh Thinking.
All right. Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks.